So, hello there, and welcome back to yet another Night of the Movies podcast. And in these podcasts, I talk all things movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's podcast, and I'm very excited about this, in today's podcast, I'm reviewing Chicken Run 2, aka Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget, after I got to see it at an early BFI screening. But before I do that, I should say what I say at the start of every podcast I do, which is, if you are watching this podcast on YouTube, hello to my viewers, but if you prefer to listen to your podcast and to only listen to your podcast, well, you're in luck, as you can also check this podcast out audibly on Spotify and Night of the Movies on that platform. And if you are already listening to this podcast on Spotify, hello there to podcast listeners, then you can also check this podcast out visually on my YouTube channel at Night of the Movies on that platform as well. Likewise, wherever you may be watching or listening to this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this podcast, of course, and leave me with some feedback on things to improve on in future podcasts, because there's always things to improve on, and feedback is, as ever, much appreciated. So, let's get into it. Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget. So, as already mentioned, this is a sequel to the original Chicken Run, which came out in 2000. Yes, this film has been 23 years in the making. In all seriousness, I don't know if it's actually been in production for that long, but it's a 23-year-old sequel, not too dissimilar than Top Gun Maverick, which came out last year. This sequel has been a long time coming, and I remember when it was announced that this film was happening, when, was it 2019 or 2020? I can't remember now. It was announced a couple of years ago that this sequel was happening, and I was surprised by that, because I must admit, when I finished watching the first Chicken Run, I wasn't sat there going, well, I hope they make a sequel to that. So when I heard that a sequel was being made, I'll just mute my laptop there. When I heard that a sequel was being made, I was surprised. But at the same time, though, it was a welcome surprise, because I wanted to see these characters back, and I was looking forward to this film because it's from Aardman Productions. And if you don't know who Aardman are, I made a video about them, I made a podcast about them a couple of weeks ago on this channel. You know, they're the team behind the Wallace and Gromit stuff. They're the team behind Early Man, which I know everyone wasn't big on, but I actually really enjoyed. But they also made the Shaun the Sheep movies and the Shaun the Sheep TV show and the Timmy TV show, which is a spin-off from the Shaun the Sheep TV show. And they made The Pirate in an Adventure with Scientists. They were the people behind Creature Comforts and so much more. And they're such a phenomenal film studio, in my opinion, because they've never missed, at least for me, at least for my money, they've never missed with any of their productions. Even their fully CGI productions like Flushed Away and Arthur Christmas, and must admit, Arthur Christmas I never really associate with Aardman Studios, but still, it is classed as an Aardman production. Even with their fully CGI films, they haven't really missed. But the thing that impressed me the most about Aardman Studios is the way they make their films. It's stop motion animation, it's plasticine figures, and what I love about them is you almost feel like you can touch these characters when you're watching them on screen, and you see the behind the scenes videos and photos of them making the Wallace and Gromit stuff, the original Chicken Run, the Pirates and Adventure with Scientists, the Shaun the Sheep stuff, and so on and so on and so on. You see behind the scenes of them making, of the people in Aardman making those films, and the amount of care and effort and time that goes into it, and the passion is just, it's remarkable in my opinion. That passion comes across usually when you watch an Aardman film. And that's one of the reasons I was so excited about a Chicken Run sequel, because it was coming from Aardman. It was their stop motion animation, you know, once again. And I wanted to see that once again so badly, because I haven't really seen that in a new film for a while. I mean, I know Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, which came out last year, I know that had stop motion animation as well, but it wasn't the same kind of stop motion animation. And there's something about Aardman Studios where whenever they bring out a film, there's this warmth that surrounds it. There's a warmth that comes with an Aardman film. And when I heard that Aardman's next film, after Shaun the Sheep Found Again, which came out in 2019, when I heard that their next full-length feature film was going to be a sequel to Chicken Run, I was naturally very, very excited, even with the voice cast change, because there has been a little bit of controversy surrounding this film. I mean, not any huge controversy, but There has been some change in the voice cast, particularly the main two. So Rocky and Ginger are no longer voiced by Mel Gibson and Julia Sawala. I might be mispronouncing the name, and apologies if I am. They are no longer being voiced by them two who voiced them in the original Chick one. Instead, we got Tandy Newton voicing Ginger, the main chicken, and we have Zachary Levi voicing Rocky, not Mel Gibson this time. And it's understandable why Mel Gibson didn't come back, because he's now quite controversial. But the decision not to bring Julie Sawala back is probably more of the surprising one. I remember at the time, Aardman released a statement saying that they thought that the actress voice had aged now, and that she sounded too much older. And at the same time, recently, Sam Fell, I think that's your director's name, just check there. Yes, Sam Fell, put it down there. Yes, Sam Fell, the director of this film, came out and said they just wanted a new voice cast. And so, I understand it from that point of view, but what doesn't really make sense is they recast the main two voice actors, but then they don't recast some of the other supporting voice actors and some of the other supporting roles. Like, for example, the one who voices Mrs. Tweedy, the villain from the first film, she's back in this film. The one who voices her, Miranda Richardson, is back voicing her in this film. And the one who voiced Fowler in the original Chicken one, David Bradley, who I'm a big fan of, by the way, he's back in this film as well. He's back voicing the same character. So on one hand, they want to have new voice actors in there because, I don't know, they want to update things, but then they're still bringing back some of the same old voice cast. I don't fully understand that. Still, I was very excited about this film. Now, regardless of the voice cast change, I was very, very, very excited for this film. And then I heard it was going straight to Netflix. Yes, this film is not getting a theatrical release. It's not even getting a limited theatrical release, like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio did last year, and like the Knives Out sequel, Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery, did last year, and like Maestro is this year. These films, which clearly were being considered for the Academy Awards, had these limited theatrical release, so they could be considered for the Academy Awards. And yet, Chicken Run 2, aka Chicken Run Dawn and the Nugget, is not getting a limited theatrical release, which I do think is a huge missed opportunity, because Aardman films in the past have been nominated for Academy Awards, and even in some cases won Academy Awards. I'm pretty sure Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which is the best animated film to date in my opinion, won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in the year it came out. I want to say 2005. Won the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature in the year it came out, and the original Chicken was nominated for Best Animated Feature in the year it came out. And yet, this film isn't going to be in the nominations because it's not getting a limited theatrical release, and I just think it's a missed opportunity to not put it in cinemas because of that, and also because people want to see an Aardman film in the cinema. I know when Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon came out, even though that film wasn't targeted at my age group, I still want to go and see it because it's from Aardman, and I want to see an Aardman film in the cinema. And I was so disappointed when I heard that it was going straight to Netflix. But then I heard that the BFI was screening it. And even though I couldn't be in London to be at the actual premiere, the film was simultaneously screening at, I think, Liverpool and at Birmingham. And I went to go and see a screening of it at Birmingham, which I was very excited to do. And I was so happy just to get to see the new Chicken One in the cinema, because that was one of the things I wasn't sure whether it was going to happen for me. I wasn't sure whether that was going to happen, whether I was going to the new Chicken One in the cinema, and I was able to. I'm so glad that I did. And the Google plot synopsis of the film goes as follows. Having escaped from the farm in the first Chicken One, Ginger and Rocky welcome a new little adventurer into their lives. Back on the mainland, chickens face a new but familiar terrible threat. And that, I've tweaked a little bit, but that's a Google plot synopsis for Chicken Run 2, aka Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget. And, as already mentioned, I was so excited to see this film. It was one of my most anticipated films for the whole of 2023. And I'm so happy to say this. This film is great. It delivers. It's such a good film, and I absolutely loved it. It delivered on giving me a cracking adventure, pun intended. You know, if you're an Aardman fan, you'll get that. Yeah, it delivered a cracking adventure for me with laughs, thrills, and real excitement, and it had that Aardman magic which I've been missing in films for so long. This is a great film, and I will say, and by the way, this is a non-spoiler review, I should say this here, I'm not getting into any spoilers on Chicken Run, Dawn and the Nugget, in my view of the film today. And I should say, you know, there are some criticisms, I do have some criticisms here and there about the film. It's not as good as the original Chicken Run, but let's be honest, little is. And it doesn't quite reach the height of Aardman's best. As I've already briefly mentioned, I think Aardman's best film to date, best full-length feature film to date, is Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. That film is complete and utter genius, and it's a masterpiece. It's one of my top 10 favourite films of all time. Love it to pieces. And it's not as good as that. And there are some big coincidences in the film. Like, there are moments in the film where characters be running into a room where some other characters are and they just happen to bump into each other. And you do have to suspend disbelief, as you do with any Aardman film. And at the same time, the musical score by Gregson Williams, you know, he was one of the co-composers for the original Chicken Run. He's come back to fully compose this one. You know, the original Chicken Run was scored by John Powell and Gregson Williams. This time it's just Gregson Williams. His score doesn't hit quite as hard. I mean, I do need to rewatch the film, and maybe I will feel differently about the musical score when I watch the film for a second time, but this time around, you know, for the first time, it didn't hit me as much. It's not a bad musical score, it didn't hit me as much as the musical score for the original Chicken Run does, and Mrs. Tweedy back as a villain isn't quite as threatening, and, you know, it didn't meet my expectations. It didn't meet my expectations. But saying that, my expectations were incredibly high, and I had such a blast with this film. I was smiling from about 30 seconds in, because the film's opening credits had the same font that the opening credits had from the original Chicken Run. I was like, oh, I know this is going to be good. I know this is going to be a good film because of that. And my smile that I had from about 30 seconds into this film didn't really go away throughout the rest of the 1 hour and 38 minute running time. It didn't really go away. Even when a crying baby in my screening started to distract from the film that I was watching, I was still smiling. I was still just taking it all up, because you fall in love with all the characters, and it's so great to see Rocky and Ginger back. And yes, there are some voice cast changes, as I've already mentioned, but I'm going to be honest, it didn't really bother me. I've heard some reviews saying that the new voice cast were a bit of an issue. I mean, I noticed that it was somebody different voicing Ginger this time around, but I got over it in about 2 minutes. I got over it really quickly, and I thought Zach Levi, you know, who most people know as Shazam, I thought he did a really good job sounding like Mel Gibson, even to the point that there was a couple of scenes I was like, are they not just reusing Mel Gibson's voice from the first one? And I don't think they did. And so I think, yeah, Zach Levi did a great job voicing Rocky, and I think that all the new characters are just instantly lovable. As soon as you come on screen, you're in love with these new characters. Like, I instantly fell in love with Molly, who is Rocky and Ginger's kid. I instantly fell in love with that character as soon as they were introduced. And I found the film emotional at times as well. Like the best Aardman films, like all of Aardman films do. You know, they get under your skin and you feel emotional towards them. And it works so well. And this is an add-on, by the way. One thing I forgot to mention, and I'm annoyed at myself that I forgot to mention it, but I'm putting it in now as an add-on because I think it's important to mention, is that another reason this film works for me so well is because it's a film about family, and more specifically, it's a film about a mother and daughter relationship, which is focused on in the film so well, and it's constantly there. It's the underlying, it's the big underlying storyline of the film, and the big underlying theme of the film, this whole stuff surrounding family, and the way that is worked into the film is just It's done so well, and that's one of the other reasons that I absolutely love this film. It's a really great sequel to the original Chicken one, and I will say this as well, you don't have to have seen the original Chicken one to understand this film. And also, you don't have to have seen the original Chicken one recently to understand this film at the same time. Like, you can watch this film having not seen the first Chicken one, and it fills in the gaps quite nicely. And if you haven't seen the first Chicken one since it first came out 23 odd years ago, you can watch this one, and it refreshes you in the opening however many minutes of the film. It literally tells you what happened in the first film, and it refreshes your memory to the point that I was like, it was like I never left. It was like I never left these characters. And the film evokes the first Mission Impossible film, which I'm a huge fan of. It also evokes You Only Live Twice, the Sean Connery Bond film. And it even evokes a little bit of the Stepford Wives. I'm not going to get into where, but there's a little bit of Stepford Wives in there. And it even evokes one of Aardman's early films. One of their earlier films from, I want to say, the late 90s, which was Wallace and Gromit: A Close Shave. Not one of their full-length feature films, it was one of their 40-minute shorts, one of the Wallace and Gromit films, which I adore to pieces, by the way. I can't speak. Which I adore to pieces, by the way, which was, the film, which was our first introduction to Shaun the Sheep. Wallace and Gromit: A Close Shave was our first introduction to Shaun the Sheep, and I loved that film. I think I've got the robotic dog from it on my t-shirt right now. Love that film to pieces. I only watched it, I watched it growing up, but I rewatched it for the first time in a long time last week. God, I forgot how good that film was. And this film evokes a little bit of that. It reminded me a little bit of A Close Shave. And so I find it funny now that Aardman is known for doing that, for evoking famous films. Like the first Chicken one is The Great Escape meets Flight of the Phoenix. And Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were Rabbit has all those Hammer horror influences, which are clearly on display in that film, as well as King Kong towards the end. And Aardman does that so well. And now I find it funny that Aardman is evoking their earlier films, though. They're taking influence from their earlier films, and it didn't bother me whatsoever. I just found it really funny. And yeah, I love the films it evokes. And I mean, I was just sitting there smiling the entire time. I'm so happy that I was, because I was worried whether it was going to work or not. And I was worried whether it was going to be another one of those straight-to-Netflix films. So many straight-to-Netflix films, like this film is going to be, don't really work that well. They're not normally that good. And yet this film is magical. It's brilliant. It's so good. And I was in awe of this animation that I was watching on screen. I was flabbergasted by certain scenes where I'm like, how did they do that? How do they make all these plasticine models work together? How much time was put into making this scene and making the stop motion animation work fluidly? I just don't know how you do it, and I was completely in shock by it. And again, I had that feeling that I had with so many Aardman films, that feeling of warmth, and that feeling that I can almost touch these characters, which is something I love about Aardman Studios, and this is the same reason that I've already spoken about on this channel, why I think Aardman Studios is the best animated studios working today. I really do think they are. I think they're better than Pixar. That might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't care. I think Aardman Studios are better than Pixar, and I'm sitting there watching this film, enjoying the heck out of it, and also thinking, why is it not releasing in cinemas? Why is this film not releasing in cinemas? Because kids would love it, and I understand that it's meant to, worldwide, it's coming out around Christmas. It's coming out on December the 15th. And Wonka, the new Willy Wonka origin story film, that's coming out around the same time, and it probably won't compete too well against that in cinemas. I understand that. But at the same time, though, people like seeing Aardman films in cinemas. The first Chicken one did really well, and Curse of the Were Rabbit did really well. And as far as I know, Earlyman didn't do too well, actually, but still, this is a sequel to the original Chicken one, and that did well in cinemas, so I think people would have gone to see this. And there's a whole segment of this film which is about popcorn, and yet the film's not coming out in cinemas. I can imagine kids I can imagine kids watching this film and coming out of it and going, oh, I want some popcorn now. And then the parents picking up the popcorn and then going into another screening of Chicken Run 2 again or something else. And it really helping cinemas. I can genuinely see that happening because there's a whole segment of the film, I'm not going to get into what I mean by this, but there's a whole segment of the film which is all about popcorn. And I just think it's so wasted that people are going to watch this whole segment of the film about popcorn and not be in a cinema. I mean, you can have popcorn in your home and everything, but it's not the same. And I think it's a huge waste that it's not going to cinemas. Not even getting a limited theatrical release. I mean, as of now, I should say, because maybe Netflix will change their mind and realise that the film is great and give it a limited theatrical release so it gets... So it could potentially get an Academy Award nomination. I mean, I don't think it'll win the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature. I think easily this year it's going to go to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. But still, it should be in the running. And it should get at the very least, a limited theatrical release. I mean, if I could choose, I would give it a full theatrical release. But it should at least get some theatrical release because... It was great seeing it at a big screen and in a full audience who were laughing at all the jokes and just going on with the film. The audience seemed engaged and you get the point I'm making. I think it's a huge missed opportunity that this film is not getting some kind of theatrical release. I think it's a huge missed opportunity. But anyway, that's just me on that. Because the film is just... Oh, it's so good. And I should also say, it's directed by Sam Fell. And he previously directed Aardman's first, and still to date, only... And I should also say that the film is directed by Sam Fell, who previously worked with Aardman on their first and still today only fully CGI film with Flushed Away. And I quite enjoy the film. I'm not going to say it's one of Aardman's best. It doesn't have that same kind of wonder that some of the other Aardman films, particularly in the animation, because it's fully CGI. But there is one big nod to Flushed Away in this film, and I won't get into what it is, but it's a nod that I found very funny, and I like that it was put in there because it was almost like Sam Fell, referencing his previous work with Aardman with Flushed Away. And I must admit, my biggest criticism with this film is that it didn't lean into the horror enough. I think the best Aardman films do that. I mean, I still remember watching the original Chicken One, and it feels weird to say, but watching the first Chicken One now, I started watching that first Chicken One film when I was a kid, and it's one of the opening scenes of the film, one of the first scenes of the film, you see that chicken getting picked up, and you see Mrs. Tweedy with the axe about to kill the chicken. And then I think the next scene is Mr. and Mrs. Tweedy eating the chicken. I remember being shocked by that and being terrified as to what was going to happen to the rest of these chickens. And you don't really get that in this film. There are some eerie sequences, definitely. Some very eerie and unsettling sequences. But it doesn't have that same horror that I think is in the best Aardman films. Whether it's the first Chicken Run or Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit, in which there are scenes I remember watching being terrified as a kid, where you see the were-rabbit eating all this veg because it's shot like he's eating these human remains. Now when I watch those sequences, I laugh my head off because, again, like I mentioned, it's shot like he's eating human remains, but he's just eating vegetables out of people's gardens. But it's genius, and you don't really get that from this film. I wish it lent into the horror more, just a bit more, because I think it would have worked better and maybe add to more the intensity of this film. Like I remember in the original Chicken One, in the first Chicken One, again it feels weird to say the first Chicken One, but I remember in that first Chicken One film, you had the whole pie sequence, the pie machine sequence, when Rocky and Ginger were trying to get out of the pie machine, and it was really intense because you knew what was going to happen to those chickens, and you don't really have that in this film. That's my biggest criticism, And another criticism that isn't as big, but I still want to mention, is that this film feels like it is slightly more targeted at a younger audience, which is a bit weird if you ask me, because, as I've already said, this film it's a 23-year-old sequel. You know, it's a sequel 23 years in the making. And the thing is, a lot of people who watched the original Chicken Run when it came out are going to be 23 years older now. Or a lot of people who watched it growing up are going to be much older than when they first watched it. Like me, I remember watching it when I was much younger, like 4 or 5 years old. And of course, I'm not 4 or 5 years old anymore. And so I was watching this thinking, I don't fully understand what target audience this film is aiming itself at. What demographic is this film aiming itself at? Because I'm not sure if it's aiming itself at the people who watched the first Chicken Run, or whether it's aiming itself at people who are only now being introduced to these characters. And if they are trying to introduce it to a new audience, why is it Chicken Run 2? Why not do a spin-off like Wallace and Gromit did with Shaun the Sheep? You know, to introduce the Shaun the Sheep character to a new audience. They did the Shaun the Sheep TV show, and then they did 2 Shaun the Sheep movies, which are both great, by the way. They did 2 Shaun the Sheep movies, and that worked because you didn't have to have seen Wallace and Gromit: A Close Shave, which Shaun the Sheep was first introduced in order to understand the Shaun the Sheep TV show. And I think if this film did that instead, it may have been even better. It may have been even better. And I'm saying that as somebody who loved the film. I absolutely loved it. But I was thinking, maybe they should have changed it and made it into a spin-off. But then would have had that same attraction. And I know this film has been a long time coming, so maybe they just thought, let's do this as a Chicken Run sequel, and let's try and do it both ways, you know. Make a sequel which will work for fans of the original film, and let's also try and aim this film at new audiences who are perhaps not familiar with these characters. And if I'm being honest, I think this film leans more towards new audiences. Saying that, the criticisms though didn't really bother me in the long run. And yes, sure, it does aim itself more at a younger audience, but I still had a great time with it. You know, I still had a really great time with this film because it's a great family adventure film. It's not even a great family adventure film, actually. It's a phenomenal family adventure film where I can imagine families sitting down to watch this film around Christmas, just before Christmas Day, or even on Christmas Day itself. And, you know, they're all sitting down to watch Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget, which is a great name, by the way. One thing I already mentioned, yeah, great name, and works brilliant in the film. The way the name of I don't even know if it's making sense more, but the way the name of the film is incorporated into the film is great. And I can imagine, as I was saying, I can imagine families sitting down to watch Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget around Christmas, and everybody getting something out of it. Sitting down in their living rooms and everybody enjoying it to some degree. I can see that happening. I mean, there's some people which may not feel the same way about it as I do, and I should reiterate that I did see it in a cinema, so maybe that's why I feel as strongly about it as I do, but I really do feel that it's going to be one of those films where people stick it on Netflix at Christmas and everybody gets something out of it. I just wish it was in cinemas. I just wish it had some kind of theatrical release. I wonder how people at Aardman are feeling about that. You know, I wonder how people who worked on this film, who poured their blood, sweat and tears into the stop motion animation, who spent so much time doing the stop motion animation, feel about no theatrical release. I wonder how they feel about that, because I know if that was me, I'd feel pretty annoyed. Saying all that, as I've already said about 1,000 times in this review today, I think this film is great. Also, this is an add-on, by the way. One thing we got to mention. I mean, I literally just finished recording this podcast and I forgot to mention this. I would be down to watch more Chicken Run sequels. And I'm not going to go into details, but this film has potential setup to do more films with these characters. And I would like to see it. Maybe in a TV show centered around these characters. I mean, apparently Aardman have this deal with Netflix right now, so maybe they're going to do a Chicken Run TV show in a similar way that Shaun the Sheep did a Shaun the Sheep TV show. So, you know, if they want to do something like that, I'm down for it. And there is a potential setup for more Chicken Run films. I'm also down for that. I would love to see more of these characters. I would absolutely love it. And it's a great sequel to the first Chicken Run. It isn't as good as that first Chicken Run, but let's be honest, nothing really is. And this film is a very worthy follow-up. I love seeing all these characters back. I thought it had a really unique premise. I loved the films it evoked. You know, Mission Impossible, You Only Live Twice, Stepford Wives, and even a bit of a close shave, which is one of Aardman's earlier pictures, earlier films. And I love seeing these characters back. I love the new characters and how they're introduced. I instantly fell in love with these characters. The musical score works. It's not as good as the musical score for the original film, but maybe I need to hear it again. And at the same time, the film, though, is just... it's really, really good. It's really, really good. It has that Aardman magic. It has that Aardman magic, and that's why it works. I've been rambling on about the film way too much, but I'm just so happy that it's good. I've been rambling about the film for about half an hour, apparently. But the reason I did is because I'm so happy it works. I'm so happy that it's really good. And in my Aardman rankings, I would say it's just better than The Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists, which is a very underrated film, by the way. And I think this film has a similar tone to The Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists. I think it's got a similar tone and similar feel to that film. So if people are fans of that film, I think you'll be a fan of this film. And if you're a fan of Aardman, I think you will be satisfied by this film. If you really like that first Chicken Run film, I think you'll also be satisfied by this as well. You get the point I'm making. It's a great film, and I loved it. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Chicken Run Dawn of the Nugget, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm feeling generous today. I'm going to say it's a 9 out of 10. Sure, this film has problems, and I could sit here and talk about its problems for a good hour, probably. But the thing is, it felt like... it reminded me of what it's like to be a kid again. You know, it reminded me of the joy I had watching Aardman's films when I was much younger. And the fact that I couldn't wipe that smile off my face watching this film just shows you how much I liked it. I mean, sure, it's got problems, but on an enjoyment level, it's just wildly entertaining. And you go along the adventure. And I am saying this, having only seen it in a cinema, and I will probably talk about this film again on this channel once it comes out on Netflix, because maybe I'll have a different opinion on that, and I need to bear that in mind. But I really think it's just an absolute treat. I really do. And as a family adventure film, as a film to watch with the family around the Christmas period, which is when it's being released worldwide, I just think it's going to be... I think everyone's going to get something out of it. And what else do you want from a family film? And, I mean, it has that Aardman magic, you know? I go on and on about all the things which work to me, and, you know, in the long run, that's what I'm going to remember when I think about this film. I'm not going to remember about the issues I had. I'm going to remember about the things I really liked to loved about it. I'm so happy it works. I was worried whether it would or not, because, as already mentioned, it's going straight to Netflix, and I get worried when films go straight to Netflix. But rest assured, this is a funny film. It's got some really funny moments, funnier than some comedies which have come out this year, and also it's emotional in parts, and it's exciting, and it has this great pace to it, and it evokes so many classic films the way the best Aardman films do, and it's just so much fun to watch. Can't recommend it enough, and I'm so excited to watch it again. Yeah. It's one of those films that the more I think about, the more I love. And it's an experience. That's why it's great as well. I always forget to mention this about some of my favourite films. It's an experience, you know. It feels like one big roller coaster, and I mean that in the best way possible. Though it feels like one big roller coaster, and I mean, I loved it, and it delivered the sequel that I wanted it to be. It delivered on the sequel that I wanted it to be, and that's why I think that Chicken Run Dawn of the Nuggets is absolutely fantastic, and that's also why I love the film, and that's also why I'm going to say once more that Chicken Run Dawn of the Nuggets is a 9 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that is it for the podcast for today. If you are watching this podcast and you've already seen Chicken Run Dawn of the Nuggets, please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what people are thinking of the film if you've seen it already. But if you're watching or listening to this podcast on December the 15th, when the film has actually come out, let me know your thoughts on it then in the future as well. I'd love to hear what people think about this film in the future. And again, apologies for rambling on, but, you know, when it's a film I've liked so much, when it's a film I've even loved, in fact, you know, I love to ramble on a bit about how much I've loved it. But, you know, hopefully you enjoyed watching this podcast today. And if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like, subscribe on this podcast. And look forward to many more podcasts coming very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you as always for watching or listening to this podcast. And I suppose this is it. So I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.